Good evening, everyone. Great to see you. Thanks ever so much for coming on the Thursday night in January to join us for the second of this webinar series. Some of you were here last week, I'm sure, but if you weren't, hopefully you got sent a link so you could catch up on the first week. There was a tip from one of the panelists earlier when we were talking, saying if you put it on 1.5 speed, apparently I sound better, more excited. So that's a little tip for you. When we sent the email out last week, I thought this was quite good. We looked at 3 questions, and one of the questions was, what are you longing for? And in my original email, there was a bit of a spell thing, and I put, what are you lounging for? We just picked that up before sending it out, but I thought that was a good question for pioneers. What are you lounging for? Anyway, the series on pioneer practice, I'm taking one of 4 themes each week. Last week we looked at the theme BU. This week the theme C, ideas, imagination. And the idea for this series and the related book was wanting to do something that focused on I suppose the practical wisdom we've learned over about a decade at CMS, the Church Mission Society, where I work. Training, encouraging pioneers. So it's a sort of practical wisdom focused thing, not a particularly academic thing or whatever. Every week I have guests. I've got 4 guests tonight. I'll introduce you to in a bit, which I'm looking forward to. It's a webinar. It's great to see you saying hi in the chat, by the way. Looks like there are people here from Australia, America, Belgium, the UK. Good to see you all. Yeah, a webinar means that you won't be seen in a usual Zoom thing, so you can just relax, enjoy yourself, make yourself at home, but do participate through the chat. We love that. I really enjoyed that last week. I mean, I've got a screen in front of me here, so I see some of the things popping up in the corner. I miss some things, but I do check in on it afterwards. But yeah, it's a great way to contribute. There's also a question and answer button at the bottom. The chat moves so fast that it's quite hard to spot the questions coming through. So there is a separate button that says Q&A. So if you've got questions, that's the best place to post them, whether that's in response to one of the panelists, an interview or something. Do post them there and we'll try and answer those. Last week there were quite a lot. It was difficult to respond to them all, but do use that. There's also an option for subtitles. So at the bottom of your screen, or at least it's the bottom on mine, it says live transcript CC. If you click on that, you'll get subtitles that come up. So if you want to watch that, you can. This is a partnership between CMS and HeartEdge. So I'm going to introduce Catherine, who's from HeartEdge, who will tell you a little bit about HeartEdge, and she is going to field the chat and Q&A for us, so I'll bring her in through the evening. Catherine, hi, how are you doing?
Hello, hi. Just trying to turn my video on. I don't think I can.
Okay, well, we can hear you.
That's great. Okay, yeah, so as Jonny said, I'm part of HeartEdge. I'm part of the development team. For those of you who don't know HeartEdge, it's an ecumenical movement, and it describes itself as galvanizing churches to be at the heart of their communities, whilst also being with those on the edge. And that's the name, the idea of being at the heart and at the edge of communities and society. So it was initiated by St. Martin in the Fields in 2017, and it's now a growing international network. So it really, oh, I've got my, there we are, I'm going to come on video now. So it really supports churches who are kind of rethinking or reimagining their relationship with wider society, and particularly who are seeking to engage in commerce, culture, compassion, and congregational life. So those are the 4 C's of HeartEdge, and you'll probably have noticed that this series is structured around those 4 C's, so compassion this evening. And in terms of what HeartEdge actually does, we kind of focus on transforming practice, and that's through actually just encouraging imaginative and holistic approaches to mission, through consultancy, through peer support, through people sharing what they're learning, but also changing the discourse around mission as well. So sort of shifting from scarcity to abundance in the way we think. And so there's seminars and online events as well. So there's lots that you can, there's lots going on. If you want to look at our website, which is you'll see the link later, but it's basically HeartEdge. So you can find out more, and it's open for individuals and churches to join. But we particularly encourage a kind of innovative and experimental approach, taking risks in HeartEdge and finding out what God's doing beyond the church. And so there is this natural kind of link with the pioneering approach as well. So that's why we're really happy to be joining with Jonny and guests this evening. So back to you, Jonny.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, great to have you here. And I get the monthly HeartEdge email. It's definitely worth signing up for that. There's always so much stuff in it. So without further ado, we'll dive into a few polls this evening. I'm sure I'll be accused of being binary again by someone, but there we go. So the first question in the poll is about to come up for you. Is pioneering a gift or something learned? You have to choose one or the other. What do you think? Okay, what have we got, Martin?
So we've got about 2/3 people so far. There's still replies coming in. Give us a second. Let's end it there.
Okay, so we got 63% saying it's a gift and 37% saying it's something learned. Yeah, I wonder what you'd say about this. I mean, I often say that pioneering is a gift. I find myself doing that. But the more I've thought about it, the more I'm leaning. I think I would tick that it's something learned, or at least something that can be learned. And that, I suppose that's the idea of the practice part, that actually by hanging around people who do things, I think you can learn a lot about pioneer and so on. But I mean, it's a wonderful gift too, so perhaps it's a bit of an unfair question. The second poll this evening is tick the answers that you identify with. Tick the answers that you identify with. This one you can do more than one. So which ones do you find you resonate with or identify with? I prefer a quiet life to a challenge. I enjoy solving problems in unorthodox ways. It's not my job to criticize established law and practice. So that I'm not ticking that one. I fear new situations. I see problems as opportunities. I'm curious. I'm quick to point out why a new idea won't work. Give you a few seconds on that one. I mean, this really is getting us into the theme of this evening, seeing, imagination, and so on. Yeah. How are we doing on that one, Martin?
Still a little way to go. I mean, there's 7 boxes to tick or not tick.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, good. We'll give it a minute or two more. It's quite an interesting challenge, by the way, designing polls. So if anyone's got any advice for me to make them sophisticated and nuanced, let me know. But it's quite good fun too. Okay, let's go. Okay, so the ones that people lean towards are people enjoy solving problems in unorthodox ways, seeing problems as opportunities, being curious, and less on a quiet life. The lowest, unsurprisingly, for a group into pioneering is it's not my job to criticize established thought and practice, not very fearful and not overly critical. Yeah, so yeah, great. Next question is, in your church or project or enterprise, I mean, I don't know what you're in, but I would imagine most people here are probably part of a community. How often are you given the opportunity for designing and creating something new? So what's the culture like in the church in relation to this? Are you never given an opportunity to design something new? Rarely, occasionally, often, or a lot? Okay, let's go with that one.
Just giving it a few more seconds. There's a few more coming in. I'm
going to be interested to answer this one as well. Okay, so it's a classic normal distribution for those of you who studied statistics. Occasionally in the middle there, often, I mean, good news, I think, only 2%, maybe that's 3 people, never, but more leaning towards often or a lot. So that's good. It seems like you're in environments where creativity is encouraged. Yeah, I like that comment coming in. If I'm not given the opportunity, I have been known to create it. Very good. And last question is rank these in order of importance. And sorry, you can't move them around in this. So we've basically got 3 things: skills, knowledge, and imagination. So from left to right, with left being the most important, which of these is the order you'd select? So skills, I won't read them all out, you can see that. So, you know, do you find skills, imagination, or knowledge more important in order? Again, interested to see what you say on this one. I think Martin and I disagreed on this one, but we may just have been being obtuse, who knows? Okay, let's go with this one, Martin, or am I just too impatient on these polls?
I think you're slightly impatient. We've still got some people coming in. 6 options to digest, you know, takes a little while.
We should have a look.
I'll end it there.
Okay. Okay, so I expected this. I must admit, Martin and I talked about this with pioneers, that imagination would be valued. I think that's interesting because in a lot of spaces that is not the case. Imaginations seem to be a bit fluffy or whatever, but I think pioneers, definitely imagination, skills higher than knowledge. Yeah, there are definitely other spaces, certainly in the church, where knowledge would be top, I think. So that's interesting. Okay, great. That's just to kind of warm you up this evening. So tonight's theme is about seeing. And last week we talked about low-level innovation, by the way, and someone got in touch with me and sent me a book in the post that they'd worked on. That's this book here by Eleanor King, who I think's in tonight. Sing, Play, Make and Pray. And I like that somebody on here was sharing the idea of something they pioneered and made. So do post a link to that in the chat, Eleanor, if you like. But tonight we're thinking about seeing, and I mean, and that really, I suppose, is about ideas, imagination. How do you see possibilities? How do you learn to see? And I think that's a critical aspect of pioneering, and it connects, as Catherine was saying, with Heartedge's sea of compassion. I mean, let me just quickly share my screen with you. I've always loved this definition by Beth Keith that she used some years ago around pioneering, which is, oh, sorry, yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, here we go. A pioneer is someone who sees future possibilities and works to bring them to reality. So it's that combination of seeing and then making things happen that pioneering is about. I've always loved that. I posted earlier on social media this, which is from the book Pioneer Practice, which is a response to a survey question. I'm from a pioneer. I'm not just crazy, I'm gifted in seeing things differently, which I rather love. So yeah, that's what we're going to think about tonight. And without further ado from me, I'm going to introduce, oh no, we'll quickly play the animation. John, who designed the book's done a short animation to introduce the theme each week. So we'll see this week's animation.
Pioneering is a gift of sight. If business as usual is straight ahead.
Sorry, tech hitch there.
You look sideways or behind and notice things that most people miss. Because you can see it, it is obvious, but after a while you begin to realise that what seems obvious to you is far from it for others, especially if they are quite happy with the status quo. They may well be blind to what you see. There are huge parallels with artists who make art out of looking in fresh ways, and with prophets who are called seers in some traditions. Their currency too is imagination. Imagination is hugely underrated. Anything that has been made was first imagined. Without imagination, we are simply stuck and going nowhere.
Definitely like the animated leg wobbling. Very good. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about seeing when you do see is that if you see something, it's obvious and you just don't realize that other people don't see it. So it can be very frustrating. I think that's a very common experience for pioneers. Anyway, let's introduce the guests this evening. And I've got a warm-up question for them as well, which you might want to think about and you could answer in the chat. How have you learned to see differently? So let's introduce the guests first. So tonight we've got Sue Steer, Anna Hembry, Susie Baker and Khadija. So welcome to you guys. Do you want to say hi, one of you? Yeah, here we go. We're all here. So, yeah, Susie, great to see you. Welcome. Do you want to say who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Susie Baker. I'm actually Johnny's sister-in-law. That's got nothing to do with tonight. I am based in North Devon on the coast in a village called Croyd, very well known for its surfing.
Great, thanks. And Khadija, hi, lovely to have you with us. I'm looking forward to meeting you down in Devon as well. It's lovely to see you here.
Thank you, John. It's nice to see you all here.
And Khadija's working with Susie on a project, so they're kind of double back this evening. Sue, hi, welcome to you.
Hi, Johnny. Thanks. Good to be here. I'm in Leicester, on the edge of Leicester, on your new housing estate called Lewisthorpe.
Yeah, great. And Anna, lovely to have you from the other side of the country.
Hi, yeah, I'm in Hull. I'm a CMS mission partner. Been here a while.
Yeah, great. So we'll talk to all of you and hear about what you're up to in a bit. But first of all, just as kind of warm up question, how have you learned to see differently? How have you learned to see differently? Sue, do you want to dive in on that one?
I think partly it's something natural that I do, and I only realised I saw things differently when I tried to do things and people said, I don't like that, that's different. Or I do like that because it's different. So I think it's a bit of a natural ability, but also mixing in different spaces with different people opens your eyes a bit more to different possibilities.
Yeah, great. Anna?
Yeah, I guess similar to Sue. I think in some ways I feel like I've always seen differently, but I kind of defaulted to assuming there was something wrong with me. So maybe what I've learned is that self-doubt is the enemy of seeing or imagining, and learned to trust my gut, my instincts a bit more. And also, I think just, yeah, living in places and being involved with people from different cultures just helps you see lots of things very differently. So.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and Khadija?
Yeah, the view from my window has changed so much that I see it very differently now. 10 years ago, I was cooking in my kitchen and enjoying looking out of my window at my very young children and my husband who were eating picnic under the tree. My heart stopped. A familiar sound shattered the quiet. I looked out window and I saw Bump hiding towards my family. I ran out the door and I didn't stop even with the sound of the explosion just a quarter of mile away, until I had grabbed my children and was holding them to me inside our house. Now, at my home in Devon, I look out my kitchen window and I can see the birds eating on the breakfast I left for them. I can see the marks on the grass where my children have been cycling around and I can see the clear sky.
Yeah, thanks, Khadija. Gosh, that's 10 years ago. It's obviously right there like it's yesterday for you. Thanks for your courage in sharing that story with us. Last week in the chat, one of the people shared something that stayed with me all week when we were asking what a pioneer was. And the comment, I think it was from Dean, was that some people are pioneers by virtue of their embodied difference. And I've thought about that all week. I just thought it was a really interesting thing. But I think that everyone so far has talked about being in different cultures and spaces as a way to see. Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Suze?
I think probably relating to Khadija, when we moved to this very rural coastal North Devon area, I think everywhere I looked, it was just white people as far as the eye could see. And I never imagined that it would be any different, but actually I see life so differently now because it's already started to be different. And that is, now I realise it's a possibility where I never thought when I first got here that I would have any kind of control or ability to change that landscape, and it's going to take donkey's years, but I tell you what, it has started. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, wonderful. Great, thanks guys. I'm going to interview you, Susie and Khadija now, but we'll come back to Sue and Anna and a couple of creative exercises as well. But Catherine, I don't know if you want to jump in at this point and share, are there any things in the chat that people, you want to pull out, ways of how do people see differently? Or
yeah, well, a few people have picked up this idea of just being exposed to people from other cultures and faiths, helping us to see differently. Somebody mentioned that raising a daughter with autism helped them to see differently. And another comment about somebody who's working on getting the logs out of their eyes. I think that's, yeah, sort of being aware of what might be in the way. So yeah, sort of echoing some of the things which have been said by the panel as well then.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, yeah, brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Catherine. So Susie, Khadija, over to you guys. Tell us a little bit about the project that you're going to talk about, which, I mean, it ties in very much, I think, with the theme of seeing and also compassion, but perhaps starting with you, Susie, tell us about the community sponsorship, however you want to jump into that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Jonny. So I think the story starts back in 2015, and I think lots of you will remember that horrific day when we saw images of a 3-year-old Syrian boy called Alan Kurdi washed up on the beach in Turkey. And we'd already seen loads of news reports of thousands of beautiful broken souls walking their way to safety with all their belongings. And I think that was just so difficult to see, and it just felt so sort of complicated and so much bigger than me and bigger than us, and what can we possibly do with this? So we kind of fundraised. At Christmas we did a kind of installation, a shed in our garden. We turned it into a stable, but it wasn't, it was a refugee shelter, and we packed off socks and colouring pencils and read and shared things on Facebook, but none of it felt very effective. And then we met someone who had been tasked by the Home Office. This is in 2016. A new scheme had been launched by the government called the Community Sponsorship Scheme. And this guy had been tasked with kind of spreading word about the scheme. And so we got him to tell us. So it's where community groups get together and you have to raise £9,000 and you have to find a property for a refugee family. And there's a few other bits involved, but they're the two hardest things. And then you can sponsor a family to come and live in your community, and you look after them for a year after they've arrived. So as soon as we heard about this, we were like, we didn't hesitate. We have to do this. This has got us written all over it. So we put together a book group and a faith group, a church group, and we put them together and created the community sponsorship team. And it was in 2017 that we welcomed gorgeous Khadija, that is here on the call. And we haven't looked back since then. We just fell in love with Khadija and her family, and we've just welcomed our 5th family, and we're expecting 2 more in the next couple of months, hopefully. And it's become now my full-time work. And now over to Khadija.
Thank you, Susie. I was living in Jordan. I didn't know where my life would end up. I was worried about my children, thinking about their future and how they could feel safer. We couldn't think about ourselves. All our thoughts were about our children and keeping them safe. I had a call from the UNHCR office asking if I would accept a place in the UK to live. I said yes. Now I am here. I can see a future for the first time since the war starts in Syria. I can see my children growing up in safety with choice of their life. For me, a life of working as well as being a mom, which I may not have had the choice to do. For my husband, he's able to do a degree and also is now trained electrician. Thank you.
Thanks, Khadija. So as a result of this, I see everything differently now. So when we're told things are impossible, when I feel powerless and I feel that I don't feel like there's anything that I can do to make a difference, I just think about every face of every family that we've welcomed in North Devon. And when I watch the news and just think, no, this is too big, I think about those families and I think, well, you know, they're here. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, sorry, can I jump in? Yeah. I mean, it feels like, I think loads of people feel this in the church and just generally in society, that our culture is so I don't know if hostile is the right word, or it's not welcoming. It's so hard. It's so painful, isn't it? So it's great you found a way to do something in response to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a hostile environment. The press and the government speak about, you know, immigrants. They banned this word immigrants around, that sort of is a coverall for anyone who's seeking safety. People might want to take me up on this in the chat. And there just seems to be a lot of effort going into quoting numbers coming over on boats. You know, I have family members that like quoting that to me from the Telegraph. And you know, this thing about turning people back into dangerous waters, the Nationality and Borders Bill, which is really inhumane and cruel. And it appears that these seem popular amongst the British public. And this is how I would see it. And this is probably how I did see it amongst the British public. I thought, well, there's no hope because everyone agrees with this stuff. But actually, because of my work, and it's like I can see things so differently, because every town and every village I go to and I say, will you help us to resettle a refugee family in your village or in your town? People are just, it's like they've been waiting for someone to come and offer them that opportunity. And now we have...
Okay, let me jump in then. I mean, there are people here, and then follow-up email will send stuff. I mean, I think as you know, got involved in a particular way, I think a lot of people have a heart but don't know what to do. So how do people get involved or connect with the community sponsorship thing if their heartstrings are tugged by that this evening?
Yeah, so there's just recently actually been set up two individuals, Dominica and Canon Gareth Jones, who've been appointed as national representatives for community sponsorship. So if it's down a church route, they are really good people to talk to, and Jonny will give you their Dominica's email address afterwards to contact about that. But also there's an amazing charity called Reset. So that's who, because we don't tend to go through churches, we tend to go to communities. It just so happens we work with an awful lot of vicars who join our groups, but it's a real cross section of the community that get involved with us. So if you don't want to go via the specific C of E route, then there is this amazing charity called Reset, and I can send Jonny their details as well, and they're a really good place to start.
I'll include that in the follow-up email, but feel free, Susie, in a minute to post it in the chat for people as well. Our time's whizzed by, but thanks ever so much. Lovely to have you with us as well, Khadija, and we'll be doing some exercises. You'll be back in, but I think it's such a great example of seeing and then, you know, making something possible out of what you see rather than just staying disempowered and not doing anything. So thanks ever so much. And yeah, stay on, because we're going to do a creative exercise together, which is, I have this pack of cards here called the Creative Whack Pack. Sue and Anna will join us as well. What I thought would be good just to talk about as an exercise, I mean, last year I did a series on creativity where the whole thing was doing these kind of exercises to think creatively, but I thought a good question for us would be, how can we get churches involved? That's the question. I mean, you've given some answers of how to connect, but I wonder, so I'm going to pull a card at random out of here, which is just a prompt for us to think. I mean, you may have creative ideas anyway, and this is the card. Oh, here we go. Imagine how others would do it. Imagine how others would do it. How would someone else change your idea? That's the prompt, but you don't have to go that route. But so if you're stuck thinking about how a church would do it, just think about how someone else might do it, and that might help you, I guess, is the thoughts. So yeah, any ideas, Sue? How would you get churches involved?
To be honest, I don't have much to do with churches. Because we've only got a little missional community in Lubbock, and all the rest of the groups are community groups.
Okay, well, how would you get the community involved?
So
that's the prompt. How would you get others involved?
Yeah, so I think people love to hear stories, don't they? So if they hear stories, I think they just come in with their own ideas, and it happens naturally. For us, we've got a hub where people come. And I'd introduce the ideas within the hub and get them to bring their ideas. Rather than do an event, it would happen through the week, I think, and get them to add ideas in there.
Yeah. By the way, do add your ideas in the chat. I'd love to hear those. Thanks, Sue. Anna?
Yeah, I was going to say pretty similar to Sue. I think stories are the way to change things, but firsthand, I don't think anyone could listen to Khadija and not suddenly have a very heart human understanding of something that might have just been an issue before. So
yeah,
I think
for sure.
Yeah,
I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to manage the rest of the evening.
Same. Yeah. So I think creating spaces where people can actually meet different people and just hear firsthand, meet people as human beings rather than, hear about people as kind of labels is probably the thing.
Yeah, great. So stories right at the heart of it. Khadija, you got any thoughts how churches might get involved? Sounds like you could go on a national tour.
I have a milk bottle. I use it.
This is for after.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, this was, how do you, I mean, you're working with community support. How do you encourage groups to get involved?
The first thing I try to arrive my story to the other people and to fix with them by the nice way, not the bad way, the hard way. It's a sad story. I got sad story, but I try to arrive it by nice way, with a humanity way.
Yeah, thanks, Khadija. I'm sure you're brilliant at that. Yeah, Suze, last thought from you on this?
Well, I just use Facebook.
Okay, fine.
It nets a lot of vicars. That's the nearest I get to church. But and non-vicars, so that's good.
Vicars and non-vicars. We've now got another binary in the world. Catherine, do you want to come in? Are there any suggestions in the chat or any Q&A coming in as well? Actually, I didn't ask about that. You could jump in.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of getting churches involved, just basically, reaffirming the idea of stories. Somebody's saying here it's reestablish stories, reestablish our humanity. Yep, lots of agreeing with this idea of stories being the way. I think in terms of questions, it's more of a general question here that Irene's asking, is seeing differently something that you learn? I don't know if that's something maybe you want to think about address now, Jonny, or at the end.
Yeah. I could jump in on that in a minute, but keep going.
Yeah, and then I mean earlier on in the chat, just more stuff around how people see differently. Some interesting ideas there. I don't know if you want me to put them in now.
No, I think pause there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, on the whether you can learn to see differently. I mean, I absolutely think that you can, and that can be through a range of things. Like the one that everyone touched on was traveling to another culture, meeting people, different people is a good way of doing it. But I think in terms of creativity, when I did the series last year, I was saying that creativity is like a muscle, and with practice, you know, you can grow it. It's not just a gift. So I think you can do things that help you to see differently. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, okay. Thanks everyone. I'm going to jump now to talk with Anna. A few people were asking, I saw in the chat, about the cards. That's I think someone's posted a link. That's called the Whack Pack, which is a set of cards that are just prompts. I think they're great, but it's also a phone app, so you can download it as an app, click on it, and you just get a particular card. So yeah, do have a look at that. Anna, great to see you. And I talked in the in Pioneer Practice book, we have a chat, and there's well, no, we don't have a chat. You wrote an article. I didn't say this last time when I talked about the book. I just sort of claimed I wrote it, but actually there are lots of wonderful people like you that have contributed. I love that piece called The Slow Rise. But you're in Hull on, I think it's Hessel Road, the area that you're in. Tell us about that area.
Okay, so our neighbourhood is lively. It's very down to earth. It's quite enterprising. It's got a growing mix of different cultures from around the world. It's full of unlikely treasure. People are very honest about themselves and have a kind of particular kind of humour that comes from hard-pressed circumstances, shall we say?
Yeah. And how's it seen? How's it seen from the outside? What's its reputation?
Yeah. To be fair, it also has a very bad reputation in Hull, out of Hull, from the people who live here, from people who've never been here. Our neighbourhood is most often described in terms of its negatives. It's, you know, high up in the stats in terms of deprivation, crime, addiction, all that stuff. And so I guess both ways of describing it are realities. But I think I've learned over the years that describing things in terms of lack, as what's her name mentioned from Heart Edge, I've forgotten her name, I'm really sorry.
Catherine.
Yeah, that describing realities in terms of lack is kind of shaming rather than freeing, which is hard really, when compassion has always been a part of my motivation for mission, and that's usually compassion because of lack. But yeah, I mean, you know, like the word compassion means to suffer with, but I think these days I'm seeing the importance of celebrating with rather than suffering.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so I think celebrating the assets of our neighbourhood, celebrating people who are more usually written off, celebrating life in the middle of everything that conspires against it, celebrating breaking bread together.
And you talked about treasure. You've obviously learned look for treasure and see treasure, which I think is a lovely sort of picture and idea. In any place there's treasure, isn't there? What sort of treasure do you know, and how do you find treasure in that way?
Well, I think if you assume there is treasure, you find it.
Okay.
And when you change that kind of lens of lack or need, or, you know, any kind of poverty lens, even though I am in a situation of real life poverty, you start to notice what else is there, and the what else is treasure. You know, I don't just mean kind of like if someone has a particularly extraordinary gift, people are treasure. And when they speak, when they share their stories, you know, when they just speak from the heart, like Khadija did, it's poetry, and it's kind of visceral, it's life. So it actually changes you, you learn stuff, you see your community differently, you see yourself differently. You know, you could pay a lot of money for that kind of stuff and not get it. That's true.
Cool. Yeah, brilliant. And there's one, I know there's a number of projects, we won't have time to talk about them all, but I mean, it feels like the main thing you do is just live there.
Yeah.
You've been there, what,
Job.
20 years or something. So something about being present in a place that helps you get under the skin of it. Well, one of the projects we've talked about and I really love is a project called Orts. Could you tell us about how that came about and what that is?
Yeah, it came. I'll try and do it quickly, but it came about.
Particularly, how did you, you know, what was the seeing that led to that? I suppose. What did you notice, or? Yeah.
The seeing was out of a conversation with a friend who I was supporting, who was involved in survival street sex work, and I'd invited her to come and see my daughter in a dance show and have something to eat, and she kind of was thrown by the whole gesture. She did come, but she was very shaken by it, because she felt it was the first time she'd had an actual friend who wasn't related to prostitution, drugs, or probation, basically. And that was I guess it was a moment of really seeing a moment of clarity for me, where I just thought, wow, this is a whole other reality, and actually a wrong, an injustice. No one should, this shouldn't be a thing. And at the same time, as I thought that, I thought, well, what should be the thing? You know, what is needed here? And that seemed to be connection with people, not because of their label, not because of anything to do with your circumstance, just connection, different people in the same space. So Orts became a safe space, a brave space. Some of us worked together. I think I'm not sure, but I expect Leanne is here, who started it with me, and it's kind of loosely hung on around sewing, but the sewing bit is the least important bit of what happens there. Yeah, people just get to share their stories, share food, share their lives. No one tells anybody else's story on their behalf. People just get to know each other in a very normal way. And there are people from all walks of life. It's not set up as a project at all. It's just.
And all Orts they're bit scraps of material, aren't they? Is that what the word Orts is?
Yeah, the word means waste scraps. And I think that really resonated with us, because it seemed that the woman I was talking about in particular, but most of us actually at different times in our lives feel very much like waste scraps, kind of only fit for the bin. But we like the idea that in the same way that God sees our potential, and we all have the possibility of transformation, that we can work with these kind of fabrics and things that were just destined for the bin. We just work with stuff that people would be throwing away, and turn them hopefully into something beautiful.
So it's a great name and it's a great metaphor. I absolutely love it. And you, in the article you wrote, you describe your role. You're very keen not to have too much of an agenda, I think, with people, but you describe yourself as curating ordinary spaces of change. Do you remember that? I like that.
Yeah, I think what I mean by that is that I just try to trust in the possibility of good things happening without my planning or control. Alongside that, I guess, alongside paying great attention to what does need space, or a bit like the permaculture thing, where you plant certain things next to each other for their mutual benefit, but then you step back more than you interfere. I feel like that's what That's
Yeah.
kind of what is important in orts. You do have to pay close attention. You have to be very attentive, but not meddlesome in people's lives.
But I mean, what I really love thinking about what Susie was sharing and what you're sharing in relation to orts is that there is, it's noticing, isn't it? You see something, you notice it, it pulls your heartstrings. God, we trust, is in that too. And then it's out of that seeing somehow that there's possibility to effect change or do something or respond. But I mean, everyone is seeing, aren't they, all the time, these things we're noticing. So yeah, I just think yeah, I think a lot of people were inspired last week by this woman, Pam, who just we called it low level innovation. It was very ordinary, and I think this seeing, maybe I'm doing it down, but we should all be able to see things like this all the time. I think, yeah, it's great. Thanks so much. Time's whizzed by, but
you're welcome.
I mean, you're really inspiring in terms of what you're doing, and I really appreciate you coming along. Stay on, because we're going to do a second exercise, which people can join in as well, which I've warned you about, and Susie and Sue and Khadija as well, which is inspired by orts, you know, is thinking, and I sent this the wrong way round to you guys. I asked you to think of something that there was treasure that you could turn into trash, but I meant it the other way around. What is an item of trash that you could turn into treasure? So while people are thinking about that, I will share a couple of things on the screen that I thought about. Hold on. Let me go down. Yeah, so trash to treasure, and it'd be interesting to hear in the chat if you guys have done things, because I think this is a way of seeing and thinking about the world in relation to the kingdom. So two things I thought about in relation to this. One was when I was up in Penrith, this was in a churchyard, someone had turned an old shoe into a bird's nest. I'd never seen that before, but I thought, I mean, I wouldn't want to nest in a shoe, but I mean, hopefully some birds do. And the second one, and I think Gav is on the call this evening, I thought this is totally incredible. Gav built a bar in Llandudno in North Wales called Third Space, but for the wooden bits of it, he basically pulled driftwood out of the sea. Nice to have a hobby over, I don't know, it must be months, years, but that driftwood became a beautiful thing in the space. I thought that was a fantastic example of trash to treasure. So Gav, thanks for the inspiration for that one. But yeah, you guys, and Khadija, I think you were waving something earlier. Do you want to go first? What's your, I can't say it the right way around, trash to treasure.
I have milk bottle into storage container. I put salt in.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
And I have a can with some fabric. It comes like this.
Oh, nice. Yeah, good. You could join orts. So
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Khadija.
Thank you.
Anna, did you have anything?
Yeah, I brought something that it's a quirky bird. It's generally the first thing that we invite people who come to orts to make. Most they often feel like, oh no, they're not really a sewer and they can't sew, and even people who are very allergic to sewing find themselves making a quirky bird and then being very delighted that they've created something. They all look very different. I didn't make this one, someone else from orts did, but it's all just made out of scraps of fabric that would have been thrown away, bits of ribbon, stuff like that.
Right, quirky bird. Yeah, get in touch with
Quirky
Anna
birds.
if you want a quirky bird. And Sue, if you're there, yeah, there you go. Susie, did you have one?
Well, funnily enough, I didn't. And then when you said all the panelists, I completely panicked, turned around, and luckily I found this, which is I was going with Khadija's, but we're not in the same room, so I got to produce. This is a trunk of a tree, and someone drilled it out for me and put an old bottle in it that was also trash.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It's a pen holder.
Great. Yeah, Sue?
Yeah, I have. Oh, hang on. That would help if you can see me. Oh, no, you're not going to be able to see me. It won't. No, it's not letting me show you. It obviously doesn't like it.
Okay, what is it? I mean, tantalize us.
Okay, so it is a leg of a pew. We ripped the pews out of the church that I was in previously, and we very handily stuck on a bottle opener. So it's a not very portable bottle opener made out of a pew.
Okay, well, we'll definitely want a photo if we don't manage to see it. Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, everyone. I'm now going to interview Sue. Whether I can get her on camera, I don't know, but she's the last guest this evening. So, Sue, you're in Loversthorpe in Leicestershire, and basically that's a new housing area. And I can't remember how many years you've been there, but basically you took on a job there to pioneer something new. That's right, isn't it? Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am desperately clicking on the video, but it won't do anything. But anyway,
it's fine. People can hear. It's okay.
Yeah, so I'm right on the edge of Leicester. It's a very old, small village that is growing into a new town, basically. So I arrived when there was about 12 foundations of houses, and we're now 5 years in. I've got about 700 houses, but there's going to be 4,000. So it's going to be a reasonably sized town in about
amazing.
20 years.
And in terms of mission, I mean, you trained with us at CMS a few years ago, which we love. But one of the ways that we talk about mission a lot is as seeing what God is doing and joining in. And then all those years ago, you find yourself in this space because you were appointed before there was a single house. So a bunch of fields and presumably a developer's hut or something. And how do you see what God is doing and join in? It's fine to talk about in a class. It sounds great, but I wonder what that kind of seeing looks like.
Yeah, I mean, when you go into somewhere where there is nothing or very little, it was quite daunting, really. But I think the thing that grabbed me about the job was when it was advertised, I did some research and somewhere I discovered the developer had put that they wanted to see it as a place where people could live, work and play, not just another housing estate. So that kind of really grabbed me, that was something I could get hold of. But I went in with kind of a community background with asset-based community development. So that's definitely about having a bit of patience, building relationships with people, getting to know them and seeing what gifts they bring and working with them to do that. But not only the people that are living there, all the other partners and stakeholders. So you've got everybody from the developer, the house builders, the council, also the school that comes on board, the parish council that comes on board. So it's about really developing relationships and seeing what happens over time. That's really important in the work that we do. And that's what's helped build it. And it's those pioneering, I think, can be really quite, it sounds exciting, doesn't it? But a lot of the time it's really boring. Well, not boring, that might not be the right word, but it's a lot of hard graft getting to know and listen, know the space. And so that takes time. And I think earning the right to speak as well takes time. And I remember when I first met the developer, he was very kind of, oh no, it's a church person, what are they going to do? And it took a lot of time to kind of build that relationship with them, who are now really on board with us and are really, really supportive of what we do. Interestingly, I don't think I've told you this, Jonny, I found out that one of the partners of the developers, their mum and dad were CMS partners in India.
There we go. It all comes back eventually. Yeah, and with the developer, Sue, I mean, I remember you talking about that and that being challenging in the early stages, but you've worked really well at building that friendship, and the developers, in terms of seeing, has seen the good that you do. You know, you've earned the right to speak, as you say. But I mean, tell us about the kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, the new opportunity that you've worked with the developer on in terms of supporting. I thought that was an exciting thing. And how did that come about?
Yeah, so I went in funded by Churches Together for a 3-year, 3 years, like many of these projects are. And we all know that pioneering will never work in a 3-year period and become sustainable. And Churches Together said that they would part fund another 3 years, but we needed to find other income. And so at that point, that after those first 3 years, I went to the developer because he was saying he was liking what we're doing. And when you're in a big development there, like we're in, there's a lot of money being spent. And he'd hinted to me that they would be prepared to help us out. So we literally went cap in hand and said, would you help us out in the long term? And actually, from a developer's point of view, they're a family that own the land, and they've got a real interest. They live in the area and they've got an interest in the community. And so they've built in the fact that every time there's a house completion, the house builders make a contribution towards what we're doing. So that gives us some long-term sustainability as an organisation.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And you've set up a KIC, community interest company, and charity. So yeah, I mean, that's such a great model. I mean, I hope that other people might learn from that. I mean, from my point of view, they're not paying you enough, because what you've done is created the word on the street that there's community in New Loversthorpe, and you've probably pushed their house prices up. So, you know, you should ask for a bit more. That's my view.
Yeah, actually, that is a bit of a downside. I feel a bit, it's become a place where it is expensive to move to for the area. We've got quite a lot of affordable housing. And actually part of the jobs now become, you know, how do we work with people when there's quite a big divide? So yeah, that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Our time's whizzed by, but again, like the other guests, I think what you're doing is really incredible. If people are in a new housing area and you want to learn about a really good way to be present, see what God's doing, join in and respond to that, then get in touch. Well, I don't know if Sue wants everyone to get in touch with her, but get in touch with Sue. I think she's just done a terrific job. Thanks, Sue. Yeah, amazing. Catherine, can I bring you in now? Sorry, I forgot to do this straight after Anna, so there might be a lot of questions and answers, things in the chat, but do you want to come in and feed in some questions and see if they're directed, who they're directed to?
Yeah, I guess with Anna, there was that kick-started quite a lot of chat around the idea of treasure and, you know, how we can be actually changed together, and how celebration and lament is part of treasure, how it's about, you know, finding the light that's already there. But then also the question here about, you know, can we say something about seeing positively, hopefully, but also realistically? So I think there's sort of stimulating some thinking there around that kind of, yeah, the sort of the treasure, the needs, the assets, the deficits. Because earlier on, people were saying, much earlier on in the chat, stuff around seeing differently is about tuning into the needs around us and feeling the pain of those around you. And I think that's used the word, Jonny, about what tugs on our heartstrings, and of course the idea of compassion and being about compassion as well. So, you know, I think that there's been conversation around that rather than maybe specific questions. There has been questions, I think maybe about how a lot of people a lot of the panelists are operating outside of the church. And so how do we get, you know, do we need to get vicars and churches involved, or do pioneers just do things under their own steam? And here I can see coming up a bit of a plug for the Pioneering Parishes course. that
Yeah.
you might want
Yeah,
to say
I
something
mean-
about, but just if
I
you want
mean,
to say
on
something about
that-
that more generally.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're trying to pick up different themes each week. Last week we picked up congregation, so definitely wanting to see pioneering in and out of church spaces and new communities and so on. But I mean, my response to that question is that's partly about seeing what you understand the church to be, because I can see the church certainly all over what Anna's doing and what Sue's doing and Susie as well, I think. But it's not church in terms of a gathering in a building. It's a network. It's a heat map. It's different kind of metaphors. It's yeast, salt. It's the church in different ways. So yeah, I think that's probably a whole debate to have another time, but we are picking up different themes. I mean, next week is going to be on build and commerce, so that won't be as focused on church either. But I do think it's great when church people are in public spaces, seeing things, responding. I mean, my simplistic way of thinking about that is, if you want to talk about good news, you've got to be good news. I mean, it's a bit like Sue was saying, you've got to earn the right to speak. But anyway, our time is almost up, I think, for this evening. Thanks ever so much to the guests. So I'll see if any of them want to have a final word in a minute. But in terms of takeaways from this evening, I think the thing I'm going away with, aside from thinking about Khadija, is the thing of noticing, just paying attention to what's happening and seeing that and letting that grab your attention and respond to it. There's something very ordinary about seeing, but it's also very easy to miss what's in front of us. And then I think it's discerning what things in particular to pay attention to, I guess. But I don't know if any of the guests, you want to come in one last time. Are there any final words from you that you want us to give as takeaways for people? What would your takeaway be, Susie, that you'd give people in terms of seeing?
Gosh, the pressure.
Okay,
I just think always see the possibility, even when you're told there is none.
Yeah, that's good. Anna?
Well, we kind of mentioned that we might talk about colonial attitudes to mission, but obviously that would be a whole other thing. But there is something about seeing that can be a learnt thing as well, not just a kind of gift. I do think we need to continually check ourselves and our power dynamic, and one easy way to do that is to ask questions about ourselves and about this, who's in this conversation, who isn't, who's got the power, who hasn't, what would happen if we flip this whole situation, which I think is like the ultimate kingdom question, and has everything to do with justice. So there are learnt behaviors as well as just this kind of, we've all got this intuitive gift and we can all notice more, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I mean, certainly in CMS and other places, I mean, the murder of George Floyd seems to have triggered a lot of conversations in a lot of spaces, but certainly in the mission conversations, that conversation was there, but I think it's been really heightened, which in a really good way, but there's some difficult thinking and conversations and seeing to do. So yeah, thank you. Khadija, did you want any last thought from you on encouraging people to see differently?
Oh, thank you so much. Just thinking about the empowerment, and they give the more space to the other people to think clearly and understand who's the people around you and the situation for the new people, new faces you see, and thinking more positive about the other people.
Yeah, thanks, Khadija. And yeah, it's lovely to have you with us this evening. Thanks everybody, all guests for coming. I'll just close out with a few plugs. We've set up a, what's the phrase, discount code for the book. So the book Pioneer Practice is organised around these 4 themes, has lots of stories and articles and so on, but you can get it for £10 with that discount code CMS Heart Edge. second plug for Heart Edge. I mean, Catherine said about Heart Edge earlier. Did you want to add anything, Catherine?
I guess just to say we've got the online stuff going on. We've got a Humbler Church, Bigger God program, and starting on the 7th of February in particular, a webinar series around contemplation as a gift for the church. And then on the transforming practice side, for people who, for members of Heart Edge, there's access to consultancy, to other resources as well. So yeah, please have a look at the website, and also the mailings that Jonny mentioned, which are full of resources each month. So have a look and consider joining up. Thank you.
Okay, great stuff. And then CMS Pioneer training. I mean, Sue trained with us. I absolutely love the pioneers that come and train with us, but I do think in terms of seeing and building and practice, it really helps. So the website is there, but if you Google CMS Pioneer, you'll find us, and there's an open day fairly soon, I think. So yeah, that's it for this evening. I did say this last week, but every week there'll be some sort of outro music and slides. The slides this week, I don't know if you want to stay for them or not, but I think there's a real parallel between artists and pioneers in terms of seeing. And one of my strange things I like to do is read books about art and creativity, and I changed the word artist for pioneer. So there's a few slides coming up in a minute with that if you want to have a look at that. But thanks everyone for coming. Next week the theme is build, and touching on the Heart Edge theme of commerce. I think there'll be 3 guests next week, but yeah, look forward to seeing you then. Thanks ever so much, and I will send a follow-up email with bits of information. And if you miss any of the weeks, you'll also get sent a link to the video so you can catch up that way. And Susie's recommendation is that I'm better on 1.5 speed. So that's a hot tip for you. Thank you very much.